So welcome to Agribusiness Matters Town Hall. I am really excited to do this town hall dialogue today with Jagadeesh, Sunkad and Emmanuel. I've been having Agritech Samvad discussions with Jagadeesh and Emmanuel for a quite long time, and it's quite an interesting, it came in very accidentally where we thought maybe we should do this dialogue together with both Emmanuel and Jagadeesh. I'm not really going to introduce both of the two gentlemen there. I think they need no introduction. They carry in our about 80 years of deep immersion in the agricultural space with a very wide variety of experience. And also what really fascinates me about these two gentlemen is that they've been in the thick of things, not just quantificating, but in the thick of things in working in operations, in startups, working with cutting edge technologies, investing in startups, and also working in hands-on with various startups and various startup founders in different roles and capacities. So that brings a very unique perspective of also having a bigger picture while also working on the on the ant side details. So I'm thank you very much, Jagadeesh and Emmanuel, for coming in and joining us in this town hall. The idea of doing this town hall was like a follow-up to the previous town hall we did on is Agritech Party Over, right? It was a rhetorical question meant to communicate the fact that the fundamentals of that old game of Agritech, what we saw until 23, have shifted very drastically and fundamentally in many ways that we are still grappling with, that many founders and agribusiness entrepreneurs who are working in the space are grappling with. So we did the previous podcast, the town hall, largely to cover how the investment and the flow of capital is changing. And if that is going to change how business is going to look like in the near future, I felt it was very important to also to do some kind of a visioning sort of an exercise of how this next future is going to be. Will we continue to it's not just beyond these terms, but what kind of future are we envisioning? So before I really open the floor for Emmanuel and Jagadeesh, I wanted to maybe set a context for this this entire theme there, because as you'd have noticed, this is a sort of the title of this is called Divergent Agritech Futures. I really wanted to take maybe a 5-10 minutes to sort of put a small presentation just to set the ball rolling and set the context for our for our town hall dialogues there. Yeah. So I'll just share my screen and maybe walk you through briefly my thoughts, and which will really set the ball rolling, because I don't think for the kind of expertise both Emmanuel and Jagadeesh bring to the table, it's necessary to set the right context and right rhythm for us to kickstart the dialogue, right? So this title of this town hall is called as a Divergent Agritech Futures, right? You may wonder, why do I choose Agritech Futures is fine, right? We are all working on the future of food and agriculture, but why we include the word divergent, right? The reason is because today, this is a very funny industry there. Everybody who talks about future talks about a world without agriculture. And that is the very funny paradox of this ecosystem, right? I don't know if you're familiar with this famous book called A World Without Agriculture. It is Tim Parr's book, which examined how in almost in all developed countries, the share of agriculture will typically come down to 3%. And so we have the normal ideas of future of agriculture in our current state is something like this kind of a picture, right? Where we have drones coming in, almost very few humans, and we see that everything the robots doing, and we have this kind of a techno fantasy vision of how our conventional futures are going to look like, right? And today a lot of people are talking about that conventional. I'm calling it conventional in a very measured sense here, right? That conventional future today is espoused by people like George Monbiot, right? Who has written this beautiful book called Regenesis, where he talks about the lab-based futures in terms of lab-based meat or cellular protein-based milk, and how those can kind of solve some of the issues related to climate change from an agricultural perspective. So the reason why I'm calling this divergent agritech futures is primarily because I feel we need to also sharply deviate from this kind of future that we have been fed by for a very long time, right? And mind you, this is not not just focused on global, right? And even in you talk to India, you talk to the policy makers, everybody has you talk to economists who are talking about the future of agriculture. Their fundamental models also stem from some of these assumptions there, right? And if you want to go down to the roots of that assumptions, you'll have to go to the work of Arthur Lewis, which probably some of you are familiar with. Arthur Lewis won the Nobel Prize for economics, and he was very known. In 1950s, he wrote this brilliant article, right? And he had, in fact, in this article, he had quoted India also, where he says the problem of development with this near infinite labor. Just to give you a visual, intuitive sense of what his paper was, there is an infinite labor that's available in a subsistence sector, and eventually they will be absorbed by the industrialization, right? And he used India as an example, primarily because those are the times when the cotton mills were booming and in the 50s, and so we thought that almost everyone can transition into an industrialization and get people to move away from agriculture, right? So this was the vision that led to what is called as a world without agriculture, and this was the underlying vision, right? And now this paper came out about in 1950s, right? And Arthur Lewis won this Nobel Prize in about 71 or something, right? And now we have to honestly ask a question: what really happened in those theories of those future, right? And if you were to really sum up, I made this presentation, this slide as a very snapshot picture of how Indian agriculture as a glance for a lot of outsiders who may not be familiar with the context of what is happening in the space, right? If you really break down the fundamental crux of the problem, it's the fact that there is an imbalance, right? We have for more than increasing, contrary to what Arthur Lewis thought, that we will have a declining number of workforce dependent on agriculture. If you see the numbers, we have increasing numbers, right? From almost from 38% to 45% has been the shift over the time in the share of workforce, right? If you look at the PLFS data. And obviously there is, and if you look at the 45% of workforce in Indian agriculture is dependent, and at the same time, the share of GDP is very low, right? Which is only about 13.5% share of GDP. And this automatically creates a lot of imbalance between labor productivity and how much of the GVA, the gross value added, that's created in agriculture. Now, what does this translate to at an economic level? Obviously, we have, if you look at NSSO data, today an average, a monthly agricultural household is about 10,000 rupees. I think now we have mostly Indians in this time, so I can talk in Indian terms. And it is about 18.6%. And the most damning statistics of all this is the fact that if you look at the current data, and almost 74% of the people cannot afford a healthy diet. Right, and there are now, I can give you more data for those who will say that, I will challenge you with this. Those who have some problems with the methodology of this data, there are enough and more data points that kind of point out to a very uncomfortable fact that we have not really done a great job in securing the nutritional, sufficiency for this country. Right, the cost in sometime in August 23, there was a study with the food inflation prices growth that the cost of preparing a thali at home, based on a survey that was done, has risen up by 65%, whereas incomes had not even increased to more than 20%. Right, so which means that obviously we are seeing that not many people are able to afford a good healthy diet. We are probably, those of us who are listening to this and reading this are some of the very privileged few who are able to do this and can write about this and talk about this. Now let's look at the other side of the picture, right? What is the state of Atmanirbhar of our Indian agriculture at this stage? Right? If you were to really look at what we are surplus is obviously rice, wheat, and sugar. Although in the current data, which I'll share it shortly, we are seeing a decline in the production of that as well. Production in horticulture, dairy, fisheries, livestock. Interestingly, all sectors where the government interference is low has seen a massive growth in production. When I publish this podcast, I will share all the data points and references there also for those who want to dig into the numbers. Now, where all in which we are not self-sufficient, we are not Atmanirbhar, is in the areas of pulses. We are producing less pulses than we produced in 1951. This is very recent data in 22. prepared by none other than Mr. Professor Amishtan. And currently, our India is only able to afford to 50% of our oil seeds that is needed for a country like us. Cotton production is also falling. Of course, I can go on to other commodities, but you get a broader picture of like wherever there is excessive government intervention, the growth has been very minimal, and that's what I pointed out, the red in terms of rice, wheat, and sugar, where the growth is not so great, but of course in other ways we have achieved some kind of a self-sufficiency, whereas in other we have neglected the pulses, oil seeds, and cotton, which obviously brings the question why is the case, right? So now, if we were to dig this deeper, obviously the one immediate elephant in the room is the fact that apart from having a sustainable poverty, we are living in an unsustainable agriculture, right? Today, if you look at this is the recent, just 2 days back data that I had almost to take a screenshot from my phone. This is the recent government's estimates of how much in the recent Rabi, what is the production estimate that is given by CACP. And if you see this data here, you will notice that almost everything has a negative estimate, right? And even though the MSP of wheat has increased is increased at a very high level, we are seeing that almost the production numbers are lower, and so the government is now acknowledging that the fact that the adverse impact is going to affect our food security in a very, very strong way. I did write about in 22 that 23 will be the year of food insecurity, but we are seeing this now play out in a much more localized way across all commodities there, right? Obviously, this is not the complete picture. I'm presenting these two for you to get a sense of a fairly balanced sense of the bigger picture here, right? What is the contrast with that, right? One of the contrasts is that if you look at the Southwest monsoon data that has been calculated by RBI in this August 23 bulletin, you will notice that while for 21, the Southwest monsoon data went below at about 0.7%, the Kharif food grain production still increased, which means that in states where there is slightly better irrigation, we are able to manage the consequences of the monsoon deficiency. And this is a lot of data is now showing up about this aspect, that irrigation is able to mitigate the adverse consequences of monsoon deficiency on agricultural production, right? And this is again something which I have been talking about in my newsletter also. Some of you might have seen my recent coverage on Philo, where I talked about this aspect here. Now, obviously, we are talking about irrigation is great. Wherever irrigation, we are putting infrastructure, irrigation development, that we can manage the volatility of climate change. But now let's deep dive into what is happening in the world of irrigation, right? If you see this data, all the public sector irrigation investments have all been falling down. We haven't invested much into canals or into tanks. The only irrigation source that has been rising is the groundwater irrigation, the tube well irrigation, and you can see this play out where there is a massive sense of inequality in terms of those who have access to groundwater irrigation and those who don't have, right? And this is the meme that I created some time back. It's a funny meme, but it points out to a very sorry state of affairs in this country, where there's almost a vast inequality in this country between those who are dependent on irrigated water sources vis-a-vis dry land. And this was a phenomenon that started off in Green Revolution, and you see this now going across all denominators, right? Take the recent PM Kisan data. In the recent PM Kisan data, we saw that there is a vast disparity of those who are getting better PM Kisan support from irrigation regions vis-a-vis the dry land regions, right? So we are creating a vast another layer of inequality between irrigated regions and dry land regions, which can further affect our entire state of agriculture. Now, again, this is something I recently talked about, right? What has not changed in this country, despite all these changes, is the fact that there are these feudal choke points where either of the three players continue to dominate rural affairs, even though whether with technology or without technology, right? You have an input provider, an output purchaser, and a local money lender, right? And each of these have a cyclical role, right? If the input provider if the output purchaser is able to get a better price, then the local money lender also increases with rates, and you see a cyclical sort of a pathway that's going in where each influences each other and continues to put a feudal choke point on a small holding farmer. And as we saw in the data from the from the NSSO data, we have more agricultural laborers and who are moving around as migrant workers in some parts of the country, and then coming back as going back to dependent on their families, their wives, and their fathers for pursuing the agriculture in their native land. Right. This data is more evident in an anecdote that I recently in a farmer I met recently when I traveled to Tamil Nadu in the Delta regions. I met this farmer who was my driver, taking me around in his car, and I asked him what is he doing, and and what he said that he's working as a agricultural laborer in the day in about 3 farms, and then in the night he has a Maruti Omni van which he uses to ferry people who are coming in those regions. So somebody had recommended him. So I was going in his Maruti Omni van. I started asking him what is happening in his family, and he was very honest and open to share what is happening going through. Right. I asked him, why did you move and become an agricultural laborer? And the first thing he tells me is, I had agricultural land, I had some savings also, and we were doing farming. But my mother got cancer, and because my mother got cancer, we had to take her to Adyar Cancer Center and spend a lot of money also for a treatment, and that depleted our savings, and so I had to go back to a laborer and couldn't pursue agriculture at all. So I take this anecdote here because in some sense it tells you the interconnected nature of this ecosystem. Right? Why did the mother probably have cancer? I'm not speculating this there, but you can see when you listen to this anecdote, which I personally witnessed, it tells me the gravity of how interconnected all of these aspects are in terms of health, in terms of the incomes and the labor, and how it leads to migration and gig workers that you see. Right? When you see the data that the share of manufacturing is declining, you would notice that is happening because manufacturing is not able to absorb, and so they had to go and rely on the gig economy or construction economy or other sorts of informal employment. So this is a very saddening picture of current reality in some sense, right? And at another level, if you were to look at what is the kind of landscape in which all of this is unfolding, is we are seeing almost a battle of paradigms between an agroecology and industrial agriculture, right? While there are some very interesting developments happening in the state of Andhra Pradesh in terms of agroecology, at the same time, we are seeing almost another parallel divergent narrative of industrial agriculture that is also increasing. Now, what do I mean by this? These are not just some fancy big picture terms here. We'll get down to specifics here, right? This was from a Niti Aayog report where we saw that at an industrial agriculture, we're talking about crop monocultures, using a genetically uniform variety, using mechanized labor saving systems, and intensive use of external inputs, which obviously have seen implications in the unsustainable part of agriculture, right? And we have talking about homogeneous products and having a long value chain. Now, obviously, in states like Tamil Nadu, Madhya Pradesh, and Andhra especially currently, we are seeing a lot of developments in agroecology. Right? Government is also in the NPOP scheme, the government is also promoting them. So we are seeing this play out as two divergent narratives in the way these two different contrasting paradigms are playing out in across this country. Obviously in agroecology, there is a lot of challenges of scale, right? And that's where we talk about a less uniform but a locally adapted varieties. We're talking about and also about maximization of multiple outputs. Here we talk about also from a climate change, climate tech perspective. We talk about circular economy. But the problem in this is it's very difficult to scale some of these initiatives unless we really rethink technology from a very different perspective. So, there is a lot to talk about it, but I'll kind of I wanted to give you a very broad snapshot. So in some sense, when I look at Divergent Agritech Futures, I am looking at various initiatives that are happening in various forms, right? We have corporate farming that is picking up. There are a lot of startups and companies that are now trying out multiple experiments, be it from the Adanis of the world, and be it from the cluster farming experiments that have been given to Desai Foods and other players, or be it the other new startups like Zeta Farms and other players who are coming in. There is also nuanced agri-fintech gameplays that are happening with players like Kiwi Prosperity, in which I think Emmanuel is invested in, and also we also seen startups that are now coming in to reduce the kind of cost of credit through either through a land registration way. We are seeing that Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, they all they started with the more land consolidation acts in these two states. And now some other developments that are happening is FCI is being unbundled. In the recent August 23, I had the opportunity of listening to a very senior bureaucrat from Niti Aayog. And currently the government has been proposing few storage initiatives, and they also want express the intent to unbundle FCI in a massive way. And we are now seeing also some database initiatives like Krishi DSS that is going to be launched. I had a chance to speak with some of the executives who are involved in Krishi DSS, where the central government wants to give access to a lot of companies to tap into the data and help and sort of through a cooperative federalism mechanisms bring states to manage the data and make sure that farmers are rewarded for the data. Right? There are also a lot of initiatives that are happening around decolonizing agriculture, especially the current BJP government that wants to promote a lot of Vedic agriculture and promote a lot of heirloom other varieties there. We are also seeing group buying financing through FPOs, which Emmanuel will elaborate more on. And of course, although they haven't really reached about more than a 10 CR sort of overall revenues, but we are still seeing a smaller chunk of FPOs that are really growing up the ladder and becoming demand-driven, apex FPOs that can kind of consolidate a different set of FPOs together. We are seeing some changes there. So, and we are also seeing, obviously, in the agroecology realm, we are seeing farmers creating their own brands and owning every component of the value chain. So, these are some of the Divergent Agritech Futures. Obviously, this is not an exhaustive list. I plan to write almost a 5,000 word post on 77 possibilities where I want to explore all of this in greater detail. But I really wanted to bring this as a teaser because I thought the idea was not to sadden you all that everything is so bad and so depressing, but idea that there are newer shoots that are emerging in. And I wanted to give this a bigger picture, to spend some time talking about it before I invite the two wise gentlemen, the wise Yodas of this space. I've had the pleasure of knowing and interacting there. So I'll first start off with, I'll stop my sharing here. I've done enough of talking for quite more than what I thought. I want to start off with both of you, Jagadeesh and Emmanuel. Maybe start off with Jagadeesh. What drives you to give optimism in given all this picture and all the data, and I'm sure you're also much in touch with all of this. What drives your optimism towards the future of Indian agriculture?
What would I say? That's a deep question for me in the sense that, look, it's fundamental that, agriculture has a longer cycle. That's about it. Agriculture and food. It's vital. See, many other technologies, many other ways we have developed, we continue to do, and we will progress. But sometime soon, we'll all get conscious of the food we eat and the agriculture. There will be value. And that's a development process we cannot stop. If I were to look at humankind and its development just as a cycle, maybe we are at agriculture and food is today at the low end of economic value created. Just whatever, 60% for GDP. But it will not remain so for long. For various reasons, known and unknown, food and agriculture will receive its value and attention, no doubts of it, and will have overlived and over-leveraged AI, ML, whatever else that today we blindly put our money behind. I firmly believe that. For me, it's a marathon race. It may feel like we are tired now, but this sector is geared for long term. Never compare it with a sprint race.
Yeah, and I think we are now, especially with the decline of the investor numbers and investing numbers, we are seeing that people are discovering a much longer game place there. Emmanuel, you've been almost in 40 years with NABARD, and I was listening to also Dinesh, your colleague from NABARD, who was also talking about how some of these problems are so perennial that we continue to talk about the same problems, right? I mean, in 1918, thanks to Vivek, who's also here in this, I read the paper which was written by B.R. Ambedkar, which was in where he talks about the same problems that we are facing in Indian agriculture. And you just change the date and name, it'll look like a 2023 new white paper written by this new gentleman called B.R. Ambedkar. I'm curious, from you, sir, when you are looking at this bigger picture with this wealth of experience, what drives your optimism? How do you see why we continue to grapple with the same set of problems here?
So, just to set a context, my father was in the irrigation department in the government of Andhra Pradesh, and
I see.
so we grew up in those project sites, and the area under irrigation from the 60s to now has tremendously increased. So in the good old days, if you saw the barren lands and when these projects were under construction, we would never have imagined what it is today. Even I think if you read the history of the Godavari River, Godavari Canal network, which was constructed by Sir Arthur Cotton. Prior to that, there was famine and distress in the Krishna Godavari area. So really, we have come a very long way from there. And transformation that we saw as children, we ourselves saw, large stretches of land in Nalgonda, in Guntur. These were just barren lands and turned into agriculturally prosperous areas, and met this kind of the food need of the country. So the priorities in terms of investing into irrigation, infrastructure, building that, and the entrepreneurial nature of the Indian farmer also. So if you see, there are villages in Telangana which are predominantly Andhra farmers, settlers they call, who have come when the irrigation came. And you would have seen that in Orissa. Even in the Hirakud Dam, Ayakat area, you'll find Telugu's farmers who came there when the dam was established. So enterprise is not lacking in the Indian farmers. And this whole fear about a crisis is also overstated. Really, the problem is the planners and the thinkers neither understand nor have devoted time to think in a holistic way. Even the way you have presented the situation today, if you go to Niti Ayog or somewhere, the guys don't know, what exactly is the issue. There's a whole productivity potential that is there. If you see in terms of the natural resources that India has, land, water, weather, sunlight, people, if you put all that together, we are suboptimal in our productivity. And just by improving, better use of these resources, we can really go places. And the neglect of the policymakers, to me, is the biggest issue that is challenging Indian agriculture. And as you're saying, the crops where there is MSP and other things are where the challenges also lie, because changing from traditional rules of the game are not happening. Sugarcane is grown where it shouldn't be. Rice is grown where it shouldn't be. The excessive focus on grains, the diversification into other crops, all these has to happen. And you announce a millet year or something, it's going to come to a close in 2 months. God knows what happens. So a holistic approach to development hasn't been there in the agriculture space. Otherwise, I think the Indian farmer is one of the smartest guys. If you really go and look at any village, I think the depressing picture that you presented versus the Indian farmer, if you see an average Indian farmer, he will, in all his small income, he will invite you for food, he will pack and give you something from his farm, So there is a lot of optimism there. It is also a question of lack of alternatives. So really the farmer is growing to meet his subsistence need, as well as because he has nothing else to do. And that is the way Indian agriculture is growing. The constraint or the difficulty is coming from those large number of people who have migrated out of agriculture and out of the country also. This land reforms in terms of an efficient land market is one thing that is very essential. So if you go towards, let us say, Kadapa, Anantapur, and other places, you'll find large tracts of land have been left uncultivated or fallow because people have some vague emotional attachment to land. So they've moved to the cities, they've migrated to the US, but they're not willing to give away that land and put it to more productive use, agricultural land, for many and various reasons, including markets that are inefficient, land markets which don't function. The prices of land as compared to the productivity of land is 100 times or more. There is no rationale for why land has to be so expensive also. And in the meantime, for reasons like redistribution and other things, government has given away the land it had to people without land and pattas and all that. And that has again led to stress on agriculture, because there has to be a biological balance between agricultural land and non-agricultural land also. Almost 30% of land has to be under other tree cover and forest, so that the agricultural land is sustainable. And that imbalance is also there. So we are actually cultivating marginal and submarginal lands. Land has to go out of agriculture. And then people who live in the villages need to get access to cultivate land. This oral tenancy that exists, and it is as high as 25% in Andhra. Oral tenancy is totally pitted against the cultivator. So all the risks he bears, but this whatever PM Kisan or whatever 6,000 rupees he doesn't get. If there is a crop loss, he is not benefited because he is not the owner of the land. So these are all the realities that we need to come to face with and address. And seeing this as too hot to handle is a problem. These policymakers, even people like me, we are outdated. If we have worked for 40 years in agriculture and not made a difference, we have also failed in our role. So really there has to be a relook at the whole sector in a very different way, and realize that this is a national resource. It is like the gold reserves of the country or something. So looking at it in that sense, no one has been doing it. And I think we have to see that the potential, the best thing about the country is the farmers themselves, that they are ready and willing to change. If you can give them the right tools and the right incentives and not sell a story to them. Unfortunately, too many of these people, including startups, have missold stories and lost the trust of the farmers. And if that is restored, India actually can be a self-sufficient as well as a net exporter of food from this country, which we are. But I think even in terms of food security, nutritional security, these are priorities that we need to give. We just can't say that we will export, we'll export shrimp and export something else and import oil. It doesn't work that way. Net, we may be a exporter, but meeting our own food safety and food security has to become a priority. And that has to be the way forward, in my view.
Thank you. I think, one of the reasons why although I could have made this as a public event and brought everyone in, one reason I prefer to do this in a small, close group is that since I know both of you well, I like the intimacy that comes in these spaces. Like, and when you're able to share this, that that for 40 years we haven't also done this. It really, your candor really really moves me. Thank you. And another level, so I will have to also, I will take your permission to be a little bit more candid and open, in these conversations, which I would rather, not bring in at, at when I'm talking at a public kind of a space, right? So, Jagadeesh, one of the things, the common things that both of you are saying is that while the system may be, ridiculous or inefficient or failing in with not people able to understand the system, in which there is system and there is farm, right? And well, that may not be happening, but we are there's no doubting about the potential of agriculture, right? And I think, Jagadeesh, you have been in our conversations, you've been fairly upbeat about some of the recent changes that are also happening, right? And because of the work that you've been doing also with startups like Zenron and other companies. So from your end, what do you think that we are doing right, and how do you see that kind of change that is happening there? Because I also, because I was accused of being depressed, and also wanted to bring in a picture of some kind of a positivity of what do you think right now we are doing right?
I think significantly the focus on kind of an emergent, powerful India. I mean, not politically, but more so like as a responsible nation in the world, as a contributor, is going to do a good lot for the whole population. Okay, and the story of agriculture will be a part of it. The way I see it, I'll just build a little on what Emmanuel was saying and come back to some things that I see. Okay. Firstly, if you ask me, this whole narrative that there is food shortage and we should be concerned about food availability is not the most true picture. While it may be so by some numbers of availability that we compute and see, the fact that we're trying to make food cheap is the problem of agriculture. Firstly, food was expensive. We wouldn't have so much wastage that we have today. That 30% wastage that we are talking of itself would contribute to food sufficiency. Okay. So far as nutrition, I don't completely subscribe to that, in the sense that, look, one number, if you see as meat consumption, has been going up. So while I still carry concerns about good, healthy diet, okay, somewhere we have gotten more on consumption of sugars, more on consumption of wheat, as against millets, and which were our traditional food, which genetically I believe we were adapted to. It's not too much. Actually, we will swing that way. Okay. For me, the waiting shock to happen, and where I'd like us to kind of adapt really, is any kind of environmental shock. For me, all other current situation of Indian farming is a creation of the policy and a certain market environment. Okay. Where the design of the intent is to keep food cheap, so that more people will find it okay to work in the cities. And I'm not complaining about past policies. If food was expensive, nobody would have left their villages and come out. Even I, as a youngster, my grandfather used to ask me as a child, how much does your father earn? He was a richer person than my father. He lived his life his way, whereas my father, being a government employee, and that too in those days at Bombay, food was controlled. You could not trade or take out rice from one district to another district. So, we used to smuggle it away and whatever. Having seen those days to what we have seen, having stood in ration queues, today we can afford to buy more. Okay. But deliberately, to build the story of modern India, we have made sure that food is cheap, so that any person coming to the city, any person building the larger economy, is not thinking about food. Okay. Rest that as it may. What do I see? What do I see the coming days? See, India does not have strategic competitive advantage on 5 crops: paddy, maize, wheat, cotton and soybean. Paddy, maize, wheat, cotton and soybean. All these 5 crops are mechanized from sowing to harvest, particularly in the temperate countries. They have a 7-month crop, we have a 4-month crop. Just by basics photosynthesis, they can produce much more than us anytime. The cost of production for them will be low, for us it will be high. Okay. Whereas if you look at horticulture crops, they cannot, no matter what they do, build thousands of robots to go out and harvest tomatoes or whatever. I mean, I do see the rapid pace of development of AI and vision systems and whatever else, but still, take my word, they are way, 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 way far away. Okay. And there, our advantage with our human resource, we can be producing. Now, the only story India has not built, and I wish to see it build, and none of our startups have looked at that, is can we build the story that our food is safe and nutritious? Rather, the damaging stories that came out in Bangalore newspaper a couple of days ago saying, your vegetables are filled with
metal content.
heavy metals and whatever. Oh boy, we're doing a disservice very badly. I'm not saying no. Being a resident of Bangalore, I witness what happens in Kolar district, which is adjacent, where a significant amount of our vegetables come from there. You know, we treated the Bangalore sewerage water. I mean, that's what the government says, and I'm only quoting them. I don't believe it's treated sufficiently. Is channeled out and all the lakes are filled there. For me, no, Bangalore has been a classic case to observe in the sense, on the one side, we have a Mandya district, which has canal irrigation and whatever. Farmers are committing suicide. On the other side of Bangalore, I have Kolar, where the groundwater table is 1,000 meters below. It's a red zone, literally. But farmers are most prosperous. Nobody commits suicide. Everybody makes money. This is a living example. This is not a kind of an accidental data or whatever of the recent times or whatever. It has been so for the last 70 years of Bangalore. You know, so a little understanding of how policy works and how farmers think. You give them all the comfort, they become lazy. You challenge them with the natural resources, they'll do the best, they will adapt themselves and go to it. India should be building the horticulture story, in which what do I see? You know, our ability to improve the quality and quantity of what we produce, the yield gap as we call it, in horticulture crop is tremendous. You know, look at how we have changed the banana value chain. Okay, look at how the guavas are coming now. Look at how we develop the pomegranates. Okay, including the current startups that are working.
The bigger guavas have become more common.
Yeah. Okay, the quality of fruit today we are seeing is much more. Okay, and I see that, for me, I'm building a little on the earlier question also. Technology has changed so many things for us. Why not agriculture? It has, except we somehow need to come to terms with, you know, this headless chicken called policy. You know, if we can figure that out, you know, quite like Emmanuel said, it's not just that we'll feed India, we'll feed good parts of the world also. Okay, I see a lot of good happening in the technology. Particularly, I'm very bullish of the ONDC technology, the blockchain technology. These will create different kinds of markets where we don't need so-called centralized forces which come and manipulate markets.
Yeah, no, which is that I want to actually delve into it once more before I come back to Emmanuel. You know, you in one of your, I listened to your recent webinar you had done on your vision for India in 2047 from Indian agriculture, right? In which you point a very important, interesting point that agriculture as a sector captures very less value.
That's right.
Right? And it was a very insightful point for me also to mull over there, because that is where, you know, in my newsletter, Vivek, I'm sure you would remember, we had drawn that smile curve, right? Where there is almost that the edges where the money is there and the guy who's in the center, the producer, is not making money, right? So, the only challenge for me in grappling with the role of technology in increasing production, while I'm completely with you on all the stories there, is that technology is not able to change this aspect of that agriculture tends to capture a very small value it generates. What it generates at the downstream level or at an upstream level. So do you see that shifting anyway with technology there?
Also, see, one of the significant changes we are seeing is how we understand and use money. Okay, so the technology, the fintech as we see it, otherwise, I'm not talking of the current payment systems and gateways and the APIs that we use, etc. But our own understanding of money and digital money, okay, which is fundamental to the so-called system of markets for food, that will make a huge change. See, at the end of the day, what is the whole pain point that we are seeing? Money is not in the farmer's pocket. You ask any typical consumer, would you feel bad if you paid a rupee or 5 rupees more to the farmer? They'll say no. Okay, I tried this experiment. The point is they don't pay it because it doesn't reach his pocket. Now, just imagine a future where I'm buying my tomatoes or apples with a QR code on it. I scan it. Okay, I pay the channel whatever it came through, and there's a fee I pay, but there's a blocked certain amount that says this money goes to the farmer directly who grew that. We have worked on traceability systems. Okay, escrow accounts and QR codes are very natural. And if the money reaches his pocket, isn't his problem solved? Isn't the channel bearing its cost and doing its work traditionally as it does? When the nature of money changes, just look at it. There's a way we can make it reach the farmer's pocket, and that will change everything. That is the technology I'm looking into. When I say blockchain, when I see decentralized markets, as I'd like to call it, then it works differently. This kind of centralized intervention where I declare an MSP, it pains me whenever I hear that. Why are you giving minimum support price? Can you not use your brains a little and say, look, I'll give a respectable support price? Okay, so I see a set of technologies on the horizon which will make a difference and which will make sure that farming is a respectable profession.
Yeah, and I think, it's a very, very interesting point to be bringing in there, because also, at one level, when we say cheap food paradigm, right, that is also tied with the aspect of every person as he moves the value chain. We've talked about this in the past, right? Every person as he moves in the value chain tries to capture value and by making the food cheaper, right? Whereas and that's where the intermediation happens there. And I think yeah, probably there is an interesting potential there. Just probably now I'll move to Emmanuel. Emmanuel, you also interestingly, and I want to talk about some of the things that we generally don't talk about, which is land markets. And you said, because of the emotional side, we don't make it efficient land markets, right? I have been observing the land reform changes that are happening. Right? Maharashtra launched the land reform acts, and then Tamil Nadu got a governor consent on special occasions they can do land consolidation. But somewhere, for obvious political reasons, we don't like to tamper into those aspects there. Now, considering what the changes which Jagadeesh is very interestingly alluding in terms of the nature of money can change this game. Do you see any changes, in terms of how land reforms could happen? Are you seeing some interesting data points that point out some changes that are happening there?
Honestly, I'm not current on this information, but I think those who have been traveling around in the countryside have been using this word crop holiday.
Yeah.
And that is the thing, the land being left uncultivated because there's nobody to tend for it. And that is becoming a significant area, which is a matter of concern. So the ability to keep that land under the plow is an important thing. So tenancy mechanisms or other ways to help those who still reside in the countryside to carry out agriculture on these spaces of land without threatening the rights of the original owners to this land. This has to be the balance. And in a way, making capital available also to tenant farmers, making available the schemes of the government to tenant farmers, extending these tenancy agreements to a longer term, so that if you just have a one season rights, you flog the land and you have no interest in investing into it
Long
on the
term.
long term. So those are the mechanisms that need to be worked upon, and this is where the concern lies, of land going out of productive land going out of agriculture. And that's a significant number, because I can't quote names, but the people who have mentioned these are people who do cross country travel. And so it must be a significant observation from them.
Interesting. Yeah, I also
Vicky,
want
I would like to put it this way.
Yes, sir.
Again, here I'm seeing, see, we should not have any policy interventions into market, even for land. Okay. But yes, there's a way we can permit fractional ownership. Basically, how do you liquidate a locked capital? Today, a farmer holds the land because its asset value is increasing, even if he just sleeps away in some city. Okay, year on year, the land value goes up, his net asset value keeps going. Okay, so without disturbing that part, how could I make that asset liquid? Okay, so that he has exactly what Emmanuel said, access to capital and access to a business model which is beyond one season. If policies and whatever, with the blockchain, if you can give fractional ownership onto land, and if I can give a 5-year horizon for somebody who wants to practice as a tenant farmer, productivity and availability will go up naturally. And they will look, give me a 5-year or 10-year lock-in for my career as a farmer. Okay, I will take care of the land. I'll invest into the land. I'll improve the soil health. I will improve the biodiversity. I'll plant long-term crops. But if you are making the land available to me just for one season, and what the hell? Even I'm going to exploit it as much as I can and run away. Okay, technologically it's possible. Is there a thought leadership towards that? Are we willing to encounter the political, what I would say, inertia? We like to whip the emotions about farmer and lands and whatever else to the extent. I'm very appalled at by the which Karnataka state has digitized all the land records, but is petrified at taking the next step of leveraging it. We have created one of the world-class infrastructures. Okay, but we will not move beyond that anywhere, because we're petrified at the political implications and the socio-economic implications of opening the data. Much as we can see a very formative stage for what you were describing on the slide about decision support systems and information exchanges. Okay, but I'm just wondering if we'll just go bypass that. Okay,
You're saying bypass, you're saying in terms of
it'll be too late.
Too late.
It'll be too late for us. Okay, look at it completely. We should stop this patronizing farmer as the poor farmer. We should do something for him. If there is anything you want to do, bloody well pay him more money. Nothing stops you. A country that created Aadhaar-based payment system and Jan-Dhan accounts, etc. If somebody is telling me that we cannot pay farmers, that's incorrect.
Yeah, Vivek, you had a comment. By the way, for Arpita and Reshmi, I really don't want to make this like I'm having the one and then you guys come in late. So feel free to chime in and bring in your conversation. Let's not make this as just we three having and then you guys coming in later. Because the idea of doing it in a small space is to make it a fairly open dialogue between all of us. All Arpita comes from a interesting public finance kind of a background. And Reshmi comes from UNIDO. So there are very diverse set of people, and Vivek is the next agritech entrepreneur and right now working in a logistics side of things. So we have a diverse group here. So yeah, please feel free to go in.
No, yeah, Arpita, please go ahead. Sorry. I have nothing to say. I'm actually listening to all the perspectives. I haven't had, exposure to this line of thinking before, and it's new to me. So I'm all ears at this point.
Thanks, Loki. But feel free to throw a question here and there.
Yeah, and feel free to disagree with us. I mean, we don't want to be the pontificating ones here.
Sure.
I just have to switch on my camera so that I can say a few things. Thank you for both of you for sharing so much, and thank you for setting the context. Amazing slide presentation. Hope a lot of people see. I don't have 40 years experience individually or 80 collectively. I have only 5 years, sir. In 5 years, I have done all the mistakes that should be done. So, and I have done the thing that most agri startup founders is to quit agri for some time. But few things that I wanted to underline here. The tone is that we're talking about South India. Horticulture is dominant in South. Horticulture is and agriculture is looked as a profession only in South. It's not there in North. No matter which state you call it out, it's not there. The states where agriculture is sustenance or agriculture is livelihood, and it's just coming about is Jharkhand, Orissa, so the states that are now cropping up. The other states where staples are the main source of agriculture, this is basically livelihood for them. They just go back, sell the produce to whoever pays them earlier. So it's just cash flow management from farmers' aspect. So that the other thing that I wanted to mention is there is farming issues and there are farmer issues. Sometimes in this divergent agriculture futures that you also mentioned, Venki, is that we are mixing both of them. At this point, this is not me saying something, but a farm leader, Gunwan Patil from Shetkari Sangatna said it. Vivek, we are at that stage where either we decide we say farming or we say farmers. And I worked for farmers for my entire life, but I am at that stage where we decide should we say farming or farmers, because farmers who are currently farming are incentivized in wrong systems, like Emmanuel sir said. Rice is growing where rice shouldn't be grown. Things like that. So they respond to incentives. So the thing that I wanted to kind of like first talk about is a lot of farmers in South are farm managers. They don't do any farming actually. They bring labor. So if you go and ask any one of them what is your biggest issue, they'll say labor, right? Which is not the case in North. Uh, Thanks to a couple of years of travel in the North, I realized that. So for them, labor is an issue today, or else they can expand. Instead of all this infrastructure or all the constraints, they are ready to be more entrepreneurial, grow more farm, increase their acreage, but they are not able to do that. So, question to both of you: what is your take on labor? Labor in agriculture, because we are the largest labor force in agri, but labor is lacking in agri. So the irony cannot be more evident in that.
Yeah, just before I let Emmanuel and Jagadeesh, I just want to set a context from where Vivek is coming in from. Vivek hobnobs a lot with Mr. Gunwan Patil, who comes from the Sharad Joshi school of agricultural activism, who was, I'm sure, for those who don't know, Sharad Joshi was a farmer turned activist who argued and fought, tried to bring a lot of reforms in the policy space to bring more market access for agriculture. And thanks to Vivek, I also had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Gunwan Patilji we came to Hyderabad and we had a long conversation about what are the policy changes and some of the work he's doing from a political and policy front on the lobbying perspective also. So I just wanted to bring that context just before I ask Emmanuel and Jagadeesh to answer the question of labor here. Yes, please, any of you.
Yeah. So, Emmanuel, I'll take the opportunity to speak first.
Sure, please go ahead.
I found this very funny or peculiar, I should say, or inquisitive for me to say, let's separate the farm and the farmer. The day I look at them as two separate entities, the magic is gone for me. Okay. For me, there's a romance with the farmer on the farm, and to look at both of them as one entity. Okay. Now, coming to this whole understanding and I mean, there were three things that Vivek pointed out, and I quite like the observations. It can come only from a person who's walked the streets. Okay. Horticulture is dominant in South, in North it's cereals and whatever. And that's largely because, again, for me, the policies where paddy and wheat were grown in those belts. Large parts of North India, so to say, are the Indo-Gangetic belt, where they had irrigation, which were the rice bowls. What was not was the Punjab-Haryana part, where the irrigation came and so became the rice bowl of India. Look, a very important thing, even in South, that I have observed, once a farmer family becomes progressive, they stop being a farmer. The wealth created on the farm is used to do other more gainful activities, which includes, say, education, moving out of farms into industries and cities and whatever else. I think we should permit that, because with development of technology, we don't need, once upon a time, we used to have 65, 70% of people dependent on agriculture. Thankfully, we have come to 45. Okay. And I think with this progress, we'll come down to something around 20% doing agriculture. That's good. As such, I see down in the village, today, a large number of folks don't do farming or don't do farm labor. The farm drudgery is not their choice of life. Okay. I think that's okay. We need to go it that way. Because ultimately, what I'm saying, look, at the end of the day, one very wicked creation that we have done is called money. Okay. So long as we have it in our pocket, we are happy. If it's not in our pocket, we are unhappy. Okay. As simple as a thing to call it of its wickedness. So when I look at agriculture as a source of income to the farmer family, boss, get your priorities right. You better go out and do something else. Okay. As painful as it is for me to say that, but let them go out. Okay. I really want to build a world where food security and shortage of food is never a thought. This is a thought that haunts only the humankind. Okay. I don't think of any other animal that thinks, oh God, tomorrow or next year or 5 years later, there is no food. There isn't going to be food. We've built a very funny, wicked world just by saying that there's going to be food shortage. Okay. I want to visualize, I want to develop, and I believe there will not be a world of food shortage. I may need to pay more, and that's okay. Today, I'm willing to pay more for my Medicare, right? If food is my medicine, why don't I pay more for that? No. So for me, this entire thing, so far as this aspect of North-South, I was saying, really in North still there's a lot more poverty and a lot more development to happen. First, they need to go through the cycle of education. Though I see a lot of North Indians migrate down to South and do all kinds of job, etc., they don't go back and do anything more there. So they will take a little longer time to develop and grow through. But somewhere, again, maybe we should intervene and educate them more that they should really move away from so-called that, because they're still in that world where they grow for their family and then grow for the market. Surplus is given in the market. South India has crossed that. Now we have crossed that stage of grow for us and then give the excess there. So we'll harmonize out there. So far as labor is concerned, we don't need too many people. When there is shortage of labor, we will innovate. Okay, we don't need a lot of labor. We need those who do work to do diligent work. Just go out to other countries and see how hard farmers work there. Our people are doing drudgery work. Okay, very low productivity. So either way, I'm not very enthused by that. But today, why labor is not available or expensive is simply because as a farmer, I'm earning less. Where will I afford to pay him more? Let my farm become profitable. Against the minimum wage of whatever today they pay about 500 or 600 in around Karnataka, we'll pay him 800 and 1,000 per day. But that's if I make a profit. If I don't make a profit, I'm not going to pay him. And so long as we have policies like in the Karnataka state, where against a 10 kg of free rice, I'm now willing to give 25 kgs of free rice per head. The family is never going to consume that kind of rice. So you come up with such policies, you're mucking the whole system up. Those are the policies I'm upset about. Labor shortage is more because of those reasons that I'm not saying don't support the poor. By all means, support that. But for the past 70 years of data, those who have got the white ration cards, which includes my relatives, please somebody go out and do a raid on them and cancel all those cards. They're very well off, but they have those ration cards. And they don't take that rice. Sometimes they may have taken, but a large number of times it is a leakage of the taxpayers' money. And long-term effect, labor is not available. Look at the consumption of liquor in all the states going up. I mean, where is poverty? They are the actual taxpayers of the nation. That's the way government has made sure that any subsidy use comes back to it.
No, I also want to bring some data in this aspect here. Recently I was speaking with a yellow dates entrepreneur from the Rot regions of Andhra Pradesh. He has been growing. This entrepreneur has been setting up almost now more than 125 acres long yellow dates cultivation and finding neighboring markets in the Anantapur district. And he gave me very interesting insights into how labor market is evolving in that region. He was saying that because there is the kind of, typically whenever entrepreneur scales his operations to about 100 plus acres, the local politician starts interfering in. And so automatically there's all kind of issues start cropping in. So he ended up, so they had to almost come to a stage where they grow the operations and buy the land, and then in his area around, he set up a small place where a lot of laborers come and stay. And they stay there for almost for a season. Some of them come in from Odisha and other places and come and work and in the land. And then so there are enough, sort of movements that are happening. Right. And we see this movements also right now happening across the country, where the migration flows are connected with the labor flows. Right. Yeah. So at one level, it seems like whenever we are increasing the scaling in, we are only saying that you are able to let you go out of agriculture, become a laborer, and you will earn more. Right. And I'm just wondering, and that trend you see, I see that trend in, becoming in Maharashtra. I see that trend happening in Andhra Pradesh, where there are more consolidations also happening in simultaneously. So consolidation, increasing labor, that seems at least some sense of convergence is what I've seen per se there. Yeah.
Just to point over there, they don't earn more. They earn consistently. Cash flow issues. That's it. That's the only reason they become labor. They get daily wage.
Look at it like that. See, you should look at it like that. Vivek is, I don't need a lot of money once in a year. I need little money every day. Okay, a farmer earns a lot of money once in a year, whereas a laborer earns little money every day, so he doesn't look at it. At the end of the day, he's buying his happiness, either through liquor and or any other form of entertainment and or whatever. So we should not compare the quantum of money that they're making. The farmer's pain really comes, I've said this many times, agriculture is only subject in the universe. I sow one seed, I'll get 1,000 seeds. That's a law of nature. There cannot be poverty in agriculture. The poverty in agriculture comes because of a market system, which when I have 1,000 grains, for every grain that I sowed, has no value. In today's lifestyle, where I have time, which I can exchange for money, 6 hours of labor work, and I get good, decent money, all I want is 150 days of employment, which is far easier than owning an asset which is illiquid. Sorry, Emmanuel, you wanted to say something?
No. I just wanted to bring in his perspective, because it's a very interesting conversation that is exploring at one end in terms of, do we need consistent income on on a small regular basis, or do we need that, right? I'm just wanted to sort of see from NABARD's history in terms of credit, right, how he has seen this question per se. I thought I'd bring that up to ask him.
Was that for me, Venkat?
Yes, sir. Yes, it's for you only. I mean, this whole discussion around, is the farmer, do we put one income at one time of the year, which is a slightly a bigger one, rather than a consistent income, which is either through labor, which is on a regular basis. I know I'm wondering how you've seen this dilemma play out from your NABARD experience.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so to put it in perspective again, responding to Vivek, uh, when we invited to panels like this, it's as if we are experts on this subject, which honestly we are not. We're just bringing our own worldview of things and the experience that we carry, having worked in different places and interacted at various levels. So let me give two perspectives. Let me just give two perspectives. Uh, in the 70s, in the 70s, before, the capital flow from agriculture to industrialization in Telangana, Andhra itself, a large amount of the industry and business that came, the capital for that came from agriculture. And so in those days, we ourselves have personally experienced, visiting these contractors, all these fellows. The politician was the landlord, the big contractor of the PWD was the landlord, and so we get invited to their farms and all that, and they used to hold large stretches of land, and with the under the care of families who used to live on those farmlands and take care of that. And then this guy used to now and then visit and live in Madras. If he's in Nellore, he'll live in Madras or some. Actually, it literally not being there itself. Very large Reddy families and others. Slowly, we have seen the land ownership pattern has also changed. If you see today, the number of people who own land is much larger than those who in the past 60s, 70s, 80s owned land. So there has been a kind of a redistribution of land ownership, consciously or unconsciously. And these guys have reduced in their importance as being called landlords also. So that has played out a role. Again, when I worked in Nagaland in the Northeast, you can visit, even today, villages where people say that they are the first generation to have seen money. They have not seen money in the previous generation. And to them, they are such self-sufficient economies. They almost have everything they need. And there's so much of prosperity. You can see that on many indicators. You can see on life expectancy, 80 years or plus. In terms of starvation, you don't see any kind of starvation. In terms of nutritive value of the crops they grow. So really the monetization of this whole economy has its own good and ill effects. So all they go to the valley is for clothing or some such things. And they live a very contented life also. So these are the contrasts that we see. And I think if you take people out of agriculture today, in whatever means, for consolidation or for industrialization, the compensation that is given to them is too meager and is easily dissipated. It just disappears. So the land is actually the security that people fall back upon. And we even today see many of our own, house helpers and these people go back to their villages during the crop season, come back refreshed, not just come back.
With a bag of rice.
They come back even healthier, even in terms of their health improves once they go back and come. So there's so much of interconnectedness between these. It's very difficult to separate these things. And I think Rama Bijapurkar sometime back has made a study which says that
I see.
more than 50% of income in rural India is coming from non-agriculture. So really the transformation has already happened. Agriculture is the base, but is not necessarily the only way of livelihood of people. So we have to see in all these contexts that there is a safety net that we will take away if we try and drive people out of agriculture. But there are multiple streams of income that are coming up, which are helping people to even out their cash flows across the seasons. And this is where we see, again, I think if you go to villages and, there's 10 to 20% of people whose children have migrated and abandoned them. Those are the people really in distress. You see very sad stories. And these guys come to us, as you were saying, when we go as NABARD, they think we are government servants, unka old age pension nahi mila. Can they do their? It's depressing to see that. But I think the average farmer has figured things out and is trying to work within the constraints on a very optimistic note. The demand is unlimited. Every fellow wants every scheme, every money. Can you get this and that? But if you see the overall totality of things, there are so many guys today again who have done MA, PhD, and now gone back because they have not found any livelihood in the cities. And the rural India is taking care of them. It's not that they are a burden on the rural India. So we have to again understand these realities and complexities between the interconnectedness of rural and urban India. Finally, what I have seen, somebody was saying that almost 50% of agricultural expenditure is on labor, 50%. So this Eruaka, our founder, he was the one who was giving us these statistics. And therefore, we have invested in a company called Balwan, which provides low cost, affordable, durable, serviceable farm implements to handle agricultural operations with otherwise require labor who are unavailable during the peak season, who are too expensive to hire, and who do not do the work they are engaged for. So farm implements of that kind, and we are seeing that company is doing exceedingly well. And trying to see that many of these operations which otherwise are drudgery and require labor can be done efficiently using machines. That will be a way forward, reasonably priced, durable, that's another thing, serviceable. So you have problems, you can go back and service them and solve this problem of labor shortage. You use them when you need them, you switch it off. So it's not like a cow or something which has to be fed around the year. And so that is the solutions we have. These are, I think, the realities that we see and the optimism that we see in the countryside also.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yes, Jagadeesh.
Venki, I just wanted to add.
Yeah, please.
When you address me as an expert or with long years of experience, I want to say this. Look, the only difference between me and many other people are I have not lost my enthusiasm.
Which is why I continue to talk to you. Which is why I continue to talk to you.
Yeah, they too have experience. There's plenty of it available. Many times people are not able to think afresh out of that. And for me, thanks to being with people, young people like you, etc., you, Vivek, and so many other people out there, I get your energy and I get your new perspective. Okay. Experience generally, sometimes I retort very rudely. Even donkeys have. Okay. We overvalue that. That's not the way. But are you able to see a future and build into it? That's what makes a difference. So engage with people to see, because I'm a firm believer that technology will make a difference to all this. We don't need the association of farming and drudgery need not be there. That's what I wanted to pick out of Emmanuel's statement. That's a very, very, what would I say? A millstone around the progress of agriculture. The idea that agriculture is drudgery. Yeah, and not to take away from it, it is hard work. Okay. But just like everybody else, after hard work, I receive a good money for it. I don't feel the pain. When I do the hard work and I don't receive the rewards for it, is when drudgery or the hard work pains me, bites me. That's all that I wanted to add.
So just to thank you for both of your answers. Yeah, checked out Balwan. They're good. I think a couple of them are doing excellent work. So the other thing that is kind of underlying is that I would say these are legacy domains like agriculture, things that always will exist. I'll take a simple example to explain. Transportation until teleportation is required, so it's a legacy business. Similarly, agriculture, as long as we need to eat, agriculture will exist in some form or the other. So they will outstay our lifetimes. So I have little penchants for words being used. We want to solve agriculture. There is nothing to solve in agriculture. It's an ever-growing ecosystem, right? We are tending to agriculture. So green revolution tended to an agriculture crisis back then and created a new crisis that we need to tend, right? Like climate is one. Right? Venki recently wrote a very nice post that probably not many people will understand because he linked so many other posts that you have to read so much. But the way we harass the ecosystem just to get what we want, right? There was this nice meme by one of the Bayer scientists saying that agriculture is not natural. It's the act of growing. Right? There is no, it's not natural as such. You are forcing something on the nature to make it happen. Whether you use chemicals or non-chemicals or whatever the stand being, but it is not natural. So that's also a nice thing. And then, so my question is, in your point of view, in all the divergent economies, what are some of the things that we need to tend to but are not being tended at this current stage? Not what is being told to be tended, because Bill Gates has landed as impact investor, but what needs to be tended to in your point of view? Because like Emmanuel sir said, Balwan is doing something that is very critical. It is not visible to the outside ecosystem. Similarly, something else that you think that would be a good place to start, and then my questions are done.
Emmanuel sir, would you like to take that? I'll have some things to say in a minute.
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay, for me it's like this. Just to echo what Vivek was saying with an example of tomato crop. The national average yield is 10 tons per acre. But if you come around Bangalore, which includes the other part of Anantapur or Denkanikote in Tamil Nadu, or whatever surrounding areas to Bangalore, peri-urban to Bangalore and Nashik city, typical yields are 25 to 35 tons per acre. They know to grow the crop well. I know farmers in Belgaum, with whom I used to work, who grow 50 to 60 tons per acre. Now, I know that under controlled environment conditions, something that I practice, we can grow 150 tons per acre. Agriculture is not natural, you are saying. Yes, beyond a point, agriculture is not natural. Okay. But can we show a sense of responsibility when we are practicing agriculture? I mean, just because I can drive my car at 150 kilometers per hour speed, I do not do that. So when we do intensive agriculture and whatever else, how can I be responsible about doing that? I mean, my aeroponic system where we consume 60 ml of water per plant against 20 liters of water, where I consume, say, a few grams of fertilizer as against a few, a kilogram of fertilizer, to say. Okay. It's a way of being responsible. Okay. I don't speak much about this outside. People know about it for no other reason. I don't want people to misread me or whatever else as a proponent or as a champion of that kind of synthetic agriculture. Okay. I believe a part of doing agriculture naturally is our way of giving back to nature and the environment. My biggest fear is not even markets, not even policymakers. The day nature and environment lashes back at life as we know it, as humankind, I mean, nobody's going to save us at that. Before we make it too late, while we do intensive agriculture and whatever, can we do responsibly? We'll responsibly use nuclear energy. We responsibly use a number of things, electronics, electricals, a number of technologies. Can we responsibly do agriculture? That would be my question. And no is not an answer. It's how. That's my two thoughts.
Thank you. Before I want to also respond to some of your point, but I want to hear to Emmanuel and then come back to your point that I want to. Yeah.
Giving me the flow, Venki?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
What is, question was from Vivek was, what are the things that you think we should need to tend it to? Yeah.
So, again, I'll go back to the second investment that we made out of our fund. To me, the man behind the agriculture is the most important person. If I have worked in NABARD and grown in rank, in income and other things, and the constituency that I serve or that I claim to serve, if their income has not in some proportion to that at least increased, then we are guilty of something. We're really guilty of something, because we have made our careers by selling their story. And that is where I think the question comes. And recently, going back to Kiwi, the second investment that we made, which is in a company called Agroecology Farming Solutions, it's planning to be a fintech in agriculture. So there's reams of literature saying that Indian farmers are underserved for credit. And then the banking system is supposed to be responsible for doing it, and it has been at the job, but still 80% of small farmers are not having access to formal credit. So we are attempting to solve that problem in a different way. There's Samonati, there's Jai Kisan, there are others who are there, Avanti, who are all saying that they're solving this. But we say that there is something in the ingredients that is missing, and that we want to bring in and do it. I think the investors who have come together to solve also are trying to do this. So that is not what I'm talking about. But one of the promoters of this company, who works in Bihar, he said that I want to do something that at least a dozen or 100 farming communities increase their income significantly in the place where I work. So he's not talking about this crores of rupees and this agrosperity trying to solve. His concern is that can I adopt some farmers and change their lives through what I'm doing? And the answer was, and it was a dilemma that he was having. The answer I said was, whatever you and I do under agrosperity is not going to solve that. We'll have to work way beyond that to be able to address this kind of a problem. And so he said, and again, he said that the crop that those farmers grow, right from quality assessment to pricing, everything is understated. Really, they are losing money because of that. So can we, handle those kind of constraints? He says that the official price may be more than the MSP, the so-called quality for which he is paid is beyond what the government has declared. But in all those transactions, the farmer is being shortchanged. And can we, that is the question he had. Can we just solve some of these market problems? And then there will be significant change. So many assumptions we have about farmers. Farmers wait for loan waivers. Farmers are in distress. Many other things we have, but I think the fairness, giving a fair deal to the farmer hasn't been there. As Jagadeesh was saying, the farmer doesn't stand beside the crop and it grows. It's biological. Growth is not something, but it can be better. Farm husbandry can be better. Yields can be improved. But when that yield is there, giving him a fair access to the market and a fair price itself, I think, can significantly, in my view, 10 to 15% right away can add income to a farmer by setting these things in order. And those kind of price signals, if they can go, price signaling is the core of it. Milk production in India has gone up. We have become the #1 producer because there was a way that we connected the production base in rural India to the urban markets, stabilized prices, assured the thing, introduced quality-based pricing. And all these led to an incentive to increase production. Now, the moment the assets are performing much better for a farmer, he will start caring for those assets much more. And that will lead to a cycle of increased productivity, increased return, increased well-being of the person. So at the core of all policy has to be the people, not the crops. The crops are incidental, the means towards that. And if we can do that, the consciousness, if we can build, even among these startups, don't talk about fundraise. Talk about how much have you been able to increase the income of your farmers through your interventions. If we can, humbly address these things, it can have transformative change.
Yeah, and I think I've also had a chance to look at Agroecology model. I think the way they are looking at decoupling agri input expenses from the credit, and I think and calling it as agri expenses loan, I see has interesting potential and possibilities in tackling the credit problem. I will have to, of course, dig in more deeper to write about it sometime in my newsletter. But yeah, thank you. I think how do we go beyond is very heartening to hear, right? Because everybody thinks that what solution they have, it's like the for the hammer, everything looks like a nail, and so we want to doubt that this solution can bring in. But I think having the humility to say that yes, this is a smaller solution, but there is a bigger problem that we tackle. I think that is really heartwarming. So I just to add to, I want to also respond back to the Jagadeesh previous comment, right? Which is connects with what the Vivek's original question, right? Today, I mean, I'm going to be again, will slightly be politically incorrect here. I'm putting a disclaimer here. But currently, Modi government's plan, when I look at the advent of 2024 elections, right, has been largely focused on this idea that we will, and very recently, just to give you some bit of background, very recently I spoke with, I had an interesting conversation with a very interesting gentleman who was in Bangalore, who's been working with the government on some of the how government can step in to create agri-tech kind of revolution in there. So I've had some insider conversations on what is happening in there. So one of the things that I'm making sense of what is the picture that is being painted out is that by creating a lot of decentralized infrastructure with the PACS, right? And which is what the storage scheme is also pointing out. We create these sort of infrastructure, and then we will eventually create a lot more bigger pool of village level entrepreneurs who can then ride in onto those infrastructure and create wealth. That is largely the story that is being touted out. And obviously the one thing that is missing in that is there is no one to look at what ways the human potential in terms of the how they can be trained and how they can learn to be better entrepreneurs is not really well addressed. So in a summary, this is how I see the BJP's agricultural story in some sense playing out there, right? And of course they also want to have other initiatives like bringing taxing in incomes and all. Those I'll keep them aside. But largely the narrative around what they're building and the promising seems to be centered around that. So I just want to bring this up from to Jagadeesh to hear in terms of, do you think this kind of a perspective is this kind of approach is making sense, and what can be done to tap into the human potential? Because you ran the school for agriculture, I want to also bring that aspect of today, considering the kind of decentralized infrastructure that we are building in, what can be done in a way where the human potential, where the person who is driving it is also has the ability to grow and run these kind of larger businesses.
Yeah. So I think somewhere there we missed out in policy making for the nation. For the engineering subjects or the pure sciences, we had an applied subject education, BE, BTech, and we had a BSc, MSc, PhD kind of thing. Okay. In the medical field, we trained doctors and we trained nurses and we trained technicians to help them. But in agriculture, we only had BSc colleges, BSc, MSc, whatever else. Somewhere we got stuck in that achievement of the Green Revolution. We never created an applied field force for agriculture. We did not address the need of farm managers. Labor is a resource to be managed. Water is a resource to be managed. Farm equipment is a resource to be managed. We never invested in that development. It's happening accidentally. Now, if an industry can have a service sector, why can't agriculture have a service sector, though it's linked to agriculture and it's service, but be treated as agriculture itself, and hence create a portfolio where the few people who do it efficiently. I think one of the revolutionary things that will change, and I have seen and I've enjoyed, and for me, more than being a founder of the school, I was a student who benefited most at the School of Agriculture. Okay, I saw a lot of it. I did a lot of it. That's one place where India needs to invest. Okay, yes, we do need infrastructure, and infrastructure can only be built by the governments. I'm not a great fan of government interventions, but look, if I had to build a road for my house, not only is my house expensive, then the road is not going to do good to me. Okay, there are certain things to agriculture that the government should do, which should be the infrastructure. One of which really is decentralized infrastructure where panic sales don't happen. Okay, I think already they're doing a good service in terms of really bringing the digital technologies. I have been part of a little of the battles that are being happening with the so-called data exchanges. There are pro and against such a infrastructure. I think exchange of information never hurt anybody. We should stop believing this kind of one more myth that markets are about exploitation. That's still patronizing, saying, oh, poor farmer will be exploited by a big Google or an IBM or whoever else who has access to data, who will crunch it and make policies against the farmer. Because that's true so long as you look as an outside person and look at a short window of time. Okay, but give it sufficiently long time. Markets are mechanism which tell people what to do. It sets the incentives and punishments. So if somebody does exploitation, the classic case I would like to tell when I speak, Harshad Mehta tried to set up the markets. He's tried to set the price in the market. Boy, oh boy, he couldn't do it for too long. Okay, and like this, when I look through literature and whatever else, many people have attempted to manipulate markets. But you can't do it for too long. See, moral hazard for human beings are a given. There will always be people who want to manipulate markets. That's where we call, governance. Put in place all those governance. But at the same time, the market has rewarded many small people. They will be rewarded. They will work. This infrastructure is necessary. I do believe in market reforms and setting it free. Okay. Don't come back and ban onion exports or put a minimum export price and whatever else. Okay, they are not going to do good to the farmer. Okay, when the prices are right, people will grow that crop. I agree that communicating to millions of small farmers is an issue. We still don't have a mechanism, but with the whole infrastructure created, I don't think it's impossible to do that. Need to devote sufficient time to communicate to them as a group. For me, where do I see technology emerging? How can I coordinate the actions for a million farmers for one direction, one impact? Like in the ant colony or the bee colony, there's one bee sets out a signal and everybody behaves according to that. Can we set such systems? Okay, that's what's catching my intellectual attention recently.
Yeah, pheromone systems is what kind of pheromone system that needs to have that make sure that creates that kind of system.
Yeah.
No, see, I think what government right now is trying to do with some of the Krishi DSS, and I also had a chance to play around with some of these systems. Like Karnataka is launching these right? Where with the fruits kind of a platform where they're trying to put the consent in. So all of these, the problem lies where they get trapped in the center state dynamic, right? There is something that is launched by the state, with the center will vehemently oppose. Or something is launched by the center, with the state will vehemently oppose.
Talk that of Karnataka.
Yeah.
You always vote for the opposite parties.
And so that's where some of these typically get fall in the cracks there. But and also to your point around the controlling the prices, right? Right now with the amount of climate change, especially the aftermath of the Hamas war and the Israel war, and what I'm noticing also is that governments want to control agribusiness much more closer because of the geopolitical implications, and we are seeing this also play out in terms of their role is, I see that becoming more strengthening per se now, especially with the kind of volatility that we are seeing in the global. So I don't know. I mean, it looks like a government, like even now, just 2 days back when the Kharif estimates I saw, there is a clear sense that climate change is happening. So the estimates are being kept lower to manipulate and control the price. So somewhere contrary to what our expectation is, government seems to wanting to control prices much more now as the advent of climate change is what is happening. Yeah.
As long as they pursue the Keynesian model where the state is a major actor to enhance economy, it's a direct way of them being in power. If they don't make food affordable, they'll lose power. So they will continue to do it. I don't think I and you can fight it at an individual level. But yes, as entrepreneurs, as direct stakeholders to farming activity, package technology in a way that it is consumable to the farmer. For 30 years, we have taken satellite images of our lands. We have not been able to package the data to them. Okay, tremendous amount of what to say.
Sorry, sir. I just wanted to add here before
Sure.
It's a thing that we have to address, because selling to farmers is actually not very productive. Just like small land holding is not productive, because they are not cash rich. They cannot afford your service, so they will want it as a service.
Yes.
So, and your business model cannot sustain as a service because you are only valued as a product. So my underlying theme here is we are focusing all our efforts on our agent who is so poor right now. Majority of them, few of them are very rich. I'm not talking about that.
Those exceptions. Yeah.
Yes, a few of them are very rich, but majority of them are really poor. They're cash strapped. They are not poor. They're cash strapped. They don't have cash flows. Like you said, right? They earn only once. A horticulture farmer earns every month somehow, manages the cash flow, but basically he spends more on getting the same cash as. Tomato farming is now lakh and half in Kolar. Yeah. It used to be 20,000 20 years ago, right? It's been lakh and half now, lakh 50,000 also, just to get the same yield, because they're losing their productivity because intensive cultivation has already happened. Same in Narangao, same in Nasik, everywhere.
Yeah.
So their own fiefdoms are getting destroyed. So pomegranate belt is getting destroyed, grape belt is getting destroyed, grape is now migrating to Solapur. What I'm trying to say over here is selling to farmer is the hardest challenge in agriculture startup. It will be beaten down because no one, even if it is valuable, they cannot pay for it. So most of the time, when I see innovative products come into the market, they are looking for financing options, government subsidy. Nothing against government over here. Government doesn't set precedence on policy, and for agriculture for last 70 years, government is showing the direction. Fintech, everyone keeps saying UPI came and took over. No, it was actually other apps, wallets that took over. UPI was the better option. They just got one guy from the other side and said, I will give you whatever it takes. Just build that at a better way. RTGS was there long back. So the history can be convoluted. The narrative can be built that UPI government led. No, but payment wallets led this innovation. UPI just took it to the market. So what is that forefront that we are setting? And the second thing is, I cannot make my services affordable to a small land holding farmer because he cannot buy my service. Whatever that service, am I inputs, I'm doing tractor. Venki knows, Mera tractor. Their major innovation is they help financing. That's why they're getting GTM. It's not because they're selling better tractors. They're helping them get the finance as well. So at the end of the day, finance becomes a very critical fulcrum over here.
True.
So
Yeah.
here is where I wanted to end, because we are focusing on one agent who is so poor because of his working.
Just to empathize with you, na, this is what I experienced when I innovated the hydrogel. It is a super absorbent polymer where just with 3 rainfalls, the farmer can have a crop. Okay, 2,000 rupees to the farmer, and I know he's earning 10,000 rupees. Okay, the sum and summary of 5 years of experience was, bus, that fellow doesn't have 2,000 rupees to give you. Forget about earning 10,000 rupees. When he has 2,000, he can dream of 10,000. He doesn't have 2,000 rupees to pay you. So went through a lot of pain in learning that bitter lesson, and I'm with you on that. And that's where, earlier I referred to the nature of money is going to change. Not just you and me have understood digital money. The farmer is also experiencing that. Okay. Rather, I want to use a phrase which some other international places they use, embedded finance. Okay. When we can embed finance into the value system, value chain, I see a different thing evolving. Okay. And it's a question of time. See, the more you push something down and let it fall down, it will spring back and bounce that much. And to me, what I see in agriculture is this, that this change will bring it back where I'm not experiencing the hazards of poor cash flow. Okay, I am a tomato farmer. I have sown the crop, and what cost me 1.5 lakhs for various reasons is available to me. Then I don't find the pain for it. And because somebody made it available to me, the onus of marketing is also taken by him. In this sense, why do I say that? Look, a typical farmer earns about 8 to 10 lakh rupees in 90 days. Tomato farmer. I mean, very few people grow 1 acre. Either you grow half an acre or you grow 3 acres, 5 acres, 10 acres. They're the big people. There are a very small marginal number of them. Now, these people do it simply because they're gambling with somebody else's money. They're taken the input on credit for half an acre. Mil gaya to mil gaya, nahi to mila to theek hai. 1 in 4 crops, I'm going to make a thing. For me, I'm looking at taking away this gamble out of agriculture. Can we use it? Can we build this entire thing as a predictable, consistent economic activity? Now, however painful it is, etc. I think things will. I'm an optimist. You've seen me, you've heard me many times. I am an optimist. I believe we'll work towards that.
Yeah, I want to bring Emmanuel actually precisely in this point, right? Because I think we are going in almost like talking about a problem where we can't sell to small farmers, so we tend to either people rely on government because of that, and now because of the government is rendered, we get into another set of problems.
Yeah.
Right, we almost seeing this cycle there. So, Emmanuel, I'd love to hear your thoughts in terms of how are you seeing this aspect of reducing the gamble and sort of leverage, making sure that the person who's offering that business or technology or there also gets his business to survive? How do you look at the other segment?
Still, I think work in progress because the skill sets in lending and recovering are a separate set of skill sets from being able to negotiate the market. And it is only the trading community who is deeply ingrained into this and has the capability to absorb these risks, because statistically over a period of time you will cover it up. So you will in the longer term make it, but in the short term there may be chances of you losing heavily and getting wiped out. The Again, coming back to startups, we are taking on this huge Goliath with a sling and stone, and trying to say that I will fight this and solve this problem. It is not going to work. So you need even the government to be around, safety nets have to be in place, because the farmer per se, if you go back, even the smallest of farmer, he'll say, right now I don't have cash, but I will pay you when I have. So the law of the land says in 90 days, if you don't get it back, it's an NPA, you have to provide for it, your rating goes down, your credit worthiness goes for a toss, you go out of business. So what to do? I am compelled to kind of lock this guy and ask him to pay back, when I totally empathize with the situation he is, and I'm sure that he will pay me back over a period of time. So it's a cyclical, as you're saying, everybody is waiting for somebody else to solve this riddle. And unless, there's a holistic approach to looking at these things. If the banking system has written off 250,000 crore of industrialist money, 250,000 crore probably is the loans that are outstanding to farmers. So I think the treatment of this sector itself has to undergo change. And the whole products, the structures, the mechanisms, the incentives, all these have to work. And thereby, I think, all said and done, price signals are the key factor. So if the seed companies are showing net profits at the end of the year, if the fertilizer companies are showing net profits at the end of the year, if the traders are making profit, why the hell is it that the farmer is the only guy who's not having profit? Everybody else seems to be prospering out of agriculture. So the whole equations are uneven and need to be made out. If the microfinance guys are making 26% out of poor farmers, and that is the whole profit, the way they are ridiculous. The rules of the game are unevenly pitched, need to be reset.
Yeah, I think that's where it almost points down to where we started. Like, I mean, every time in agriculture, it's like it's this whole thing that your pura system badalna hai, and we come back to it and somewhere we also and we get trapped into that, right? We want to bring in those changes, and I think some changes technology is forcing us to bring in some of these changes in very very subtle ways, but I think yes, a lot of fundamental changes have to be brought in, and we've reached a couple of hours now. I would love to go on for some more time, but I don't want to sort of really push this further where I test your energy levels there. So I thank you very, very much. It was such a lovely conversation. I couldn't have imagined anything more better than beautiful than this. the kind of insights that each of you brought, whether it's from Emmanuel, in terms of your history with your irrigation. I didn't know that you started from your father was in irrigation space, and from there to Jagadeesh talking about how money is changing, and it's something that I've never thought about it. And so there's so many takeaways for me to mull over this. So I'm going to also I will be publishing a transcript of this conversation and also publish the recording. Probably for all you know, I might publish this to the entire larger community also. But deeply insightful and deeply grateful for both of you for taking time to have this informal space. And and thanks Vivek, thanks Arpita for also chiming in.
Thanks, Vicky, for the opportunity. Thanks, Arpita. Thanks, Vivek.
Thank you.
Of course,
Thank you.
Emmanuel, Venki, and me have exchanged lots of notes.
Yeah.
But each time it's new, I enjoy it.
Pleasure is mine, sir.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Good
You
night.
enjoy evening. See you. Bye.